Hey everybody, Chris Serino here with Sultana Education Foundation's Virtual Classroom, and today I'm going to be showing you some of the component pieces of a flintlock musket. So this is a non-firing replica of a type of flintlock musket called a Brown Bess. This would have been invented in the late 1690s and then used all through the 1700s right up to about 1830. This would have been really prevalent in the days that Sultana was patrolling the Chesapeake Bay. So I'm just going to go over some parts of the gun and we'll do a little dry firing run just to show you how this would work. So the reason it's called a flintlock is right here. This is called the hammer. There's a couple clips that would have been holding a piece of flint. All right, and when flint hits steel, it makes a spark. This piece here is called the frizzen. So to load the gun, you would cock this back to the first click, push the frizzen forward, and then put some powder here on the pan. So powder was often stored in a hollowed out horn of a bowl, and this is called a powder horn. This might be poured directly into, say, a swivel gun on Sultana, but for a musket, you generally would be using a pre-measured cartridge, a pre-measured amount of powder in paper like this. So you'd have both powder and the musket ball in this little device. Bite off the paper and pour a little bit of powder in the pan and then close the frizzen. Then you would take the rest of the powder, pour it down the barrel of the gun, add your ball, and then this is called a ramrod. On a working gun, this would slide out and you would push both the powder ball and the paper all the way down to the bottom here of the barrel. At that point, the last step is to fully cock the mechanism back here, and I'm ready to fire. So what we're going to see here is just a click, and you'll see that initial contact between the flint and the steel, which would ignite a spark, send it down into the pan, and start a chain reaction that would eventually push your ball out the barrel. So here we go. So again, we're going to cock this back to the half-cocked position, put the frizzen up there. We would put our powder there in the pan, pull this all the way back. So it's fully cocked. Now the gun is ready to fire if you've loaded the barrel. And here's what the firing mechanism looks like. So there's a few problems with this gun. One is that it takes a pretty long time to load. An experienced marksman could fire off a round in about 15 to 20 seconds. That doesn't sound like a long time, but when someone's firing at you, that's a pretty long time. If it was rainy or dewy or really damp, you might not be able to get a spark to ignite your powder. Sometimes your powder would ignite and it wouldn't go through the touch hole here and engage with the powder in the barrel. But probably the biggest problem with this gun is that when you fired, it was very unlikely that your ball was going to go straight. That's because this is a smooth bore barrel. There's no rifling in here. So if I were to look down the barrel, it's just smooth metal. So instead of the ball coming out from a spiral pattern and cutting through the air, this gun would fire a knuckleball and it would be wobbly. So one of the strategies the soldiers had would be to line up in a field and all fire at once. And the idea was you're going to get a lot of lead in the air and that would help you hit your target. Another thing that you could put on the gun, which was kind of a modification in case it wasn't firing or you didn't have time to load, was this. And this is called a bayonet. This would slide on to the end of the barrel. You could screw it tightly. And then what I basically did is I turned my musket into a thrusting spear. So you could use this if you ran out of ammunition. The British were also very well known for doing this at the end of a battle to basically do a bayonet charge and run their enemies off of the field. The last thing I'll say about the flintlock musket is sometimes it was called a flinchlock musket, and that's because when this pan ignited, you could see that flame right near your face. It was very normal for the marksman to flinch ever so slightly, and that made this even less accurate. So here's Salty Dog, Captain Jamie Trost, firing the musket, and this is what it would have looked like if I had been showing you an actual firing weapon. So that's the basics about the component parts of a flintlock musket. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Come check us out on the Virtual Classroom for more cool material.